We had been doing a summer series called Songs of Summer, and it dealt with the Psalms. The Psalms were really poems written by worship leaders 3,000 years ago to kind of lead the people of God as they worshiped Him. So the thought occurred to us, why couldn't we get one of our worship leaders to share their heart in a way that maybe would be meaningful to the entire congregation? Seemed like a good idea. So I thought, Rachel Waters, my daughter-in-law, has been in our church about 15 years. I wonder if she would consider sharing her story. So I went to her and I asked her that. And I was really quite surprised because I thought she would say, "Are you out of your ever-loving mind? I am not going to be able to talk in front of the congregation." But instead she said, "Can I pray about it?" I said, "Sure." And so 2 days passed and she came back to me and she said, "I would be honored to speak and share in the Sunday morning service." I have been so amazingly excited about today, I can't even tell you. She is nervous, as you can imagine, but she is going to be fantastic. Would you give a warm village welcome, Rachel Waters, AKA Big Red. Big Red.
Well, good morning. A little different kind of being on this part of the stage this morning, but like Ray said, when he first proposed to me about speaking, my initial thought was absolutely not. I don't talk. I'm not a talker. Ethan would completely disagree with that statement. But in general, just the idea of preaching or teaching is very intimidating to me. I don't think I'm equipped or experienced or educated enough to really teach anybody anything about anything, but especially from up here. So I just kind of want to share a little bit of my story, where I come from, and to give you an idea of what I feel like God has been putting on my heart specifically over the last year. So just to dive right into it, and we're going to have some music throughout to make me feel a little bit better in my comfort zone. So it's going to look a little bit different, but I'm just excited to hang out with y'all this morning. So like some of us, or like most of us, I grew up going to church. My parents weren't super involved when we were younger, so we would go with my granny every Sunday. And I just have so many memories of music growing up from my granny. I really attribute a lot of my love for music to her. She sang in the choir for several years. She's been trying to become a part of our Waters Family Quartet for several years. Hasn't happened. She's still fighting the good fight, maybe one day. But I just remember learning just the classic hymns from her, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus," "There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place." And of course, there's one that I think most of us learned from childhood, "Jesus Loves Me." And so I asked Darwin and Sharon to help me out on this one. So y'all sing along, because I know you know it. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible, it tells me so well. Little ones to Him belong, they are weak, but He is strong. Jesus loves me, He grab a stool. My feet are hurting. Another thing that I remember from growing up in church with my granny is every Sunday morning when we woke up and got ready for church, we would have a full-blown photo shoot. Like Olin Mills style, kind of over the shoulder poses. It was serious. It was legit. I think we might have some pictures, maybe not. Yeah, it was the real deal. God, that's a lot of ruffles. But that was kind of Sunday morning for us. That was the routine. We would wake up, we would get dressed, we'd go to church, and then we'd go to Piccadilly afterwards. And that was my idea of church. You wake up, you look your best. Oh, yeah. But you wake up, you look your best, you go to church, and you get chocolate pie when it's over. And there wasn't anything complicated about it. And really at that age, there shouldn't be, right? As I got older, I kind of bounced around to different churches, mainly just following whoever my friends were at the time. And in 2001, I started attending the Village Church, which at that time was located in Stockbridge. And I also began my freshman year of high school. And I was very involved in cheerleading. I was very involved in the chorus. And if there was a weekend where we didn't have a game or we didn't have a chorus concert, you could typically find me at a bar. Not as all as scandalous as I would love for it to sound. But I was not at the bar for the drinks, and I was usually with my mom, and we were going karaoke. We would literally bar hop. Every weekend, we knew the rotations of the karaoke companies in the area. We knew which places they hit, and we would go sports bar to sports bar so that I could have my little moment of singing country music. And country music holds such a soft spot in my heart. I grew up on it. There's something about a steel guitar, and there's something about the authenticity of the lyrics of a country song, because good, bad, or ugly, they're going to tell you exactly what they think. And so for anybody that's not a country fan, I apologize in advance, because it's about to get real country up in here. Probably never heard this at church before, but this is one of my favorite songs. It's actually a newer country song, but it's got it falls back into the roots of country music for sure with the lyrics. So. My mother's tied on with a guitar string, oh, $7,000 to a bank machine before this car is ever really mine. Some fine day I'll drive her downtown, get a burger, fries, and a royal crown, thanking God that I'll never have to pay another dime. 'Cause my life is like a lemon drop, I'm sucking on the bitter to get to the sweet part. I know there are better days ahead. So I'll play my hopes and play my dreams just like 2 coins in a slot machine, singing glory, hallelujah, everything works out fine. 'Cause my life is like a lemon drop, I'm sucking on the bitter to get to the sweet part. I know there are better days ahead. Lord, I know there are better days ahead. In Jesus' name, amen. So fast forward a few years, I graduated from high school and went to college at Columbus State University. And honestly, my college experience, it was not anything that really, I didn't find out who I was in college like some people hope to do. It was kind of just your typical college experience. I went to class most of the time. I worked a part-time job, and the rest of my time was just spent making dumb decisions one after another. Pretty typical. But in 2007, I was still attending the Village Church, and thank you, earning points, look at you. In 2007, I was still attending the Village Church when I would come home from college, and Ray proposed to me about joining him and a group of people to go on a missions trip. And wasn't feeling real Jesus-y right then in my life, but I figured trip to Europe, yeah, sounds good to me, whatever. And as luck would have it, about a week before we left for the trip, everybody else that was supposed to go backed out for various reasons, personal reasons, divine intervention. I don't really know what you want to call it. But it ended up being me, Pastor Ray, and Ethan, my now husband, who was not my husband at the time, not even close to my husband. And so real awkward, just the idea of spending 3 weeks traveling with someone that you barely know. But I had already received some financial support to go on the trip, so I couldn't really back out. So we went. And it was a great trip. It was an incredible experience for me, but there was nothing pretty about it. I mean, we traveled different houses each night and never really knew who we were going to be staying with. And at one point in the church, we actually traveled over to the Ukraine for a couple of nights. And we stayed with the sweetest family, but they just were the poorest of the poor. Their floors were falling in. They didn't have running water, so we had to use an outhouse. And it just was a different experience. So that night when we got ready to go to bed, we kind of were all, in separate bedrooms, but the bedrooms, everything was very compact. The walls were paper thin. You could hear everything. And so we're laying there and we're getting ready to go to sleep. And the missionary friend that we were with and traveling with let one rip. And I'm trying not to laugh because he'll hear me, because you can hear everything. I mean, I think people in Poland heard it. And Ethan pipes up and says, "Rachel." And that's when I knew I loved him. That was the beginning. But the majority of our trip was spent in Poland at a youth camp. And it was just such a cool experience spending time with these kids. There's a depth to the children that were at this camp that I don't think I'd ever seen before in American children. And so every night, or every day, we would play games and kind of play outside, and then every night we would have a service. And it always started out with music. They had a keyboard player, and they had a sweet little girl that would play the violin every now and then. But one of the songs that they consistently sang is one that we all grew up on, "It Is Well With My Soul." And there just was something about hearing that familiar song sung in a different language, but still being able to feel the truth and the beauty of the lyrics, even though I couldn't understand what they were saying. And so this is kind of what the service would start out with. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my Lord thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Y'all sing that with me. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Y'all sound good. But that's how the service would start. And then they would bring in a pastor. Sometimes it was Ethan or Ray that was speaking, or sometimes they brought in a local pastor. And one night they brought in a local pastor, and he was terrible. I mean, even translated into English, it was awful, just terrible. He was very much the kind of point and criticize style of preaching. He was more interested in telling them who they shouldn't be, who they shouldn't hang out with, the life that they shouldn't be living, and which is just different from what we hear a lot of times here at the Village. So it started making me angry. Like, I started feeling myself physically get angry about it. And so after the service was over, I think Ray could physically tell that I was upset. So he pulled me to the side and we took a little walk right beside where the camp was. And I just kind of lost it. I fell apart and I started spewing out all of my anger on this man, saying, who is he? Who is this man to tell these kids, these young influential children, who they can't be, who they can't serve, what they shouldn't be doing? And I realized as I was continuing to spew the anger out on him, that I really was not happy with myself, and that it really was more of a reflection for me, that I was not living the life that I felt like God had called me to live while I was living in Columbus. And I just kind of fell apart. And I know Ray was sitting there thinking, this guy was awful. Like, how did you have a God moment from that? But that's how God works, right? I mean, he can take a message that is speaking death over someone and he can bring it to life. And that's what he did for me. And so when we came back home, I decided to finish out my fall semester at Columbus and to move back home so that I could be closer to the church and closer to the things that I really wanted to invest my time in. And as luck would have it, Ethan and I did start dating. Ray got his way. But Ethan was going to school up in Virginia at the time. And so about a year and a half after we started dating, he received a job offer from a church about 40 miles east of where he was going to school in Virginia. And I think we both knew that this was a big moment for him in his career. But I think we also could tell that it was really a turning point for us in our relationship. And even though we had never talked about marriage at that point, I think we both felt that we were moving in that direction. And so about a month after he accepted the job, we got engaged. And 2 months later, we got married. We don't waste time. And we moved up to Prospect, Virginia. And this was such a sweet season in our life. I mean, we're newlyweds and we're living away from home and we're at this precious little church, this Baptist church, which is totally different from the village. I mean, we would stand at the end of at the back of the building to shake hands when the service was over and thank everybody for coming to the service, and they would hand us bags of vegetables. Totally blew our minds. We're used to the village where you might find a cigarette butt in the offering plate. So little bit different than what we're used to. And we were loving life, and we were loving each other a lot. Like a lot. Because about 6 months in, we found out we were pregnant. Yay! And so we prayed about it, and we thought, if we are going to be starting a family, we want to be home to do that. And so we resigned from the church, and we moved back home. And in October 2010, our first child, Avery Jackson Waters, was born, and we were in heaven. And the next 5 years kind of flew by. We moved into our first home in East Point. Ethan began a career in sales. I started working full time. We were swimming in debt and diapers. And it just was kind of a crazy whirlspin of everything. And life just kind of took over. Things moved so fast. And we were still attending church, but I think because life was moving so fast, God kind of lost his luster a little bit. We were busy adulting and didn't really have time for God. And so before we knew it, we were pregnant again, this time planned, with our second son, Reese Kendrick Waters, and he was born in June of 2014, and we were in heaven all over again. And about a month before Reese was born, Ethan accepted a job offer, making just barely enough money to afford for me to stay home for a little bit with Reese. And the next year of getting to stay home with Reese and Avery was such a precious time for me. It was sacred. I mean, I got to experience milestones and firsts for Reese, and as precious and sacred as it was exhausting, and it was lonely, and it was tiring, and all the things that people don't really tell you about parenthood. And I thought about doing a mom song this morning, tell you about, how much I love my kids, whatever. But I knew I'd be a blubbering mess if I tried to dedicate any kind of song to them, so I will spare you that. But I did want to share this lyric from a song by Natalie Grant, and it's called When I Leave the Room. And she wrote this song for her children. And the lyric says, "You'll have a seat in the front row of everything I don't know." And that is the truest line I think I've ever heard. Because as beautiful as motherhood is, it is scary, and it brings out every insecurity in you never even knew you had. And I could feel over the year of staying home with Reese and Avery that truth was starting to seep in on me and was starting to affect me a little bit. And on top of that, I started feeling the financial stress of going from 2 incomes to 1 income, from feeding one more mouth with one less paycheck. And I could feel my fists starting to tighten up when it came to our finances, and I became very intentional about every dime that we spent. And looking back now, we had everything that we needed, and we even had a few things that we wanted. But I had gotten used to the security that came with the amount in our bank account that I was used to, and it looked a lot different, and it was freaking me out. So about a year after staying home, Ethan and I decided that it was time for me to go back to work. And so I applied for several jobs and actually started interviewing with a really great company in Atlanta. And as soon as this job possibility became a potential for us, we went straight to the dream board and we started racking our brain with all of the possibilities that this job could offer, the security that it could offer financially, the types of neighborhoods we could afford to live in, the types of schools that our kids could go to, just all the things that we'd always dreamed about. And I'm looking back now as we were making that list of dreams, I'm realizing God was not at all a part of that. Those were our dreams. And we were so excited about the potential of those becoming true. During all of this, I started reading a book with a couple of girlfriends in my neighborhood. And we would meet every week and we'd rotate houses, we'd drink wine, swap diaper horror stories, and then we would read whatever book we were reading at the time. And we started reading a book called Anything by Jenny Allen. And Jenny Allen is a fantastic Christian author. If you haven't read any of her stuff, I encourage you to do so. But this book just talks about a season in her life where she felt really complacent and she felt like life was just kind of had plateaued for her. I mean, she had everything she ever wanted. She had a gorgeous husband, gorgeous kids, gorgeous house, flourishing church that she was a part of. But something was still missing. There was a void. And so in a night of desperation, her and her husband prayed, God, we will do anything for you. Whatever that looks like, we will do anything. And God takes them up on it. And so as I'm reading this book, I start to feel a tug on my heart because I'm feeling a little spiritually empty at the time. And so I think I could pray this prayer. Like maybe this would get me up out of my funk. And so I start praying, God, I will do anything for you. Anything. I will do anything. And then I started thinking about it. And anything's a pretty broad term, right? I mean, it's anything. Like, doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for exceptions because it's anything. And so as I continued to pray the prayer, I started adding more specific terms to it. You know what I mean? Like, God, I will do anything for you, but. God, I will do anything for you except. And I slowly started to add addendums to this beautiful prayer. And I began manipulating my prayer into a list of requests like every other prayer I had prayed before. Because I really didn't want anything, right? I mean, I didn't want God's plan for my life. I wanted God to be on board with what I was planning and what Ethan and I were busy scheming up for our life. Because what we were planning was built on savings accounts and financial security and benefit packages. And so didn't feel like God would really, he could mess that up. And as I started to realize that I was building up an obsession for comfort. And I was building up an obsession for security. And I was starting to taint what could be a really beautiful submission to God. And I started to realize God did not create me to live a comfortable life. God did not create me to have a pretty life. And please don't walk away from this thinking that I think God expects us to live in discomfort or distress, because I don't think that he wants that for us at all. I don't. But if you're chasing after the comforts of this world, we're missing it. And I started to realize I was missing it. I was missing out on so much more because I was chasing after the wrong things. Because, do we really think that when God knitted us in our mother's womb that he was thinking, Rachel, I've got some plans for her. She's gonna have friends that look and think just like she does. She's gonna avoid any and all risks. She's gonna have a perfectly filtered life that looks fantastic on Facebook. No, right? That's not what he's thinking when he's creating us with all of these dreams that he has for us. That's not in his plan. And by me putting restrictions on my anything prayer, I was working my way back to the life that I was trying to pray my way out of. I was chasing after what society teaches us to chase after, the American dream. I was putting all of my eggs into a basket that says, if you die with a certain amount of money in your bank account, you've lived a successful life. Because that's what we're fed from the moment we enter this world. And God is telling a totally different story. His dreams are bigger than that. His dreams tell us that the American dream is a facade. The American dream tells me that my safety and the safety of my children comes first. God's dreams say that when you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. The American dream tells me that in order to feel secure, I need to have my income fall within a certain bracket. And God says, watch this. Trust me. Your money, it doesn't hold a candle to the riches I have for you. The American dream is self-serving, and if we're serving ourselves, we cannot possibly be serving God. I claimed I wanted more, but the reality was I just wanted the same, but I wanted to feel better about it. You know, I didn't really want my life to look different. I didn't want my eyes to be open to too much. I just wanted to feel better about my eyes being closed to it. And it's so funny because the stories that we learn as a child, they don't have anything to do with security or comfort or safety. I mean, I think about David and Goliath, Noah and the ark, Jonah and the whale. I mean, these poems and illustrations are driven from risks and discomforts and anything except safety and security. Because if we're living for our own comfort, we're not living for God. My favorite part of the entire book by Jenny Allen, called Anything, she's just kind of had her moment. She's on the bathroom floor weeping and sobbing to God, I'll do anything for you, I'll do anything for you. And she writes this, I almost got away with a wasted life. What if I had blown off the interruptions he was offering? I might be stuck with the mediocre life I was so afraid of losing at the time. And when I read that, it was like I was reading my soul. I was reading what I was feeling. And I started to realize that God created me to be brave and adventurous. And brave and adventurous lives are not built on savings accounts, and they're not built on prestigious educations. They're built on relationships with people, real people. They're built on the intentional seeking of more. They're built on standing up for the underdog, and they're built on saying no to a system that does not work. They're built on loving the unloved, and there is nothing safe or comfortable about that, but there is everything beautiful about it. I just want to say that this morning, if you are feeling a void, if you're feeling that something might be missing, just ask yourself, who are you serving? What are you serving? Are you serving the dreams that you're busy making for yourself, or are you serving the dreams that God created for you long before you ever existed? There's a song that it's kind of just been my mantra over the past year, and it's called In Over My Head. And just the lyrics of this word just speak so true to what I've been feeling. And I'm going to ask the band to come up and help me sing this. But I wanted to tell you some of the lyrics before we get into it. The verse says, I have come to this place in my life. I'm full, but I'm not satisfied. This longing to have more of you. And then it says, I'm thirsty. My soul can't be quenched. You already know this, but still come and do whatever you want to. I got in a car accident on Thursday. Me and my son were in a collision with a wrecker, and it was a pretty big wreck. I think the car is probably totaled. It was just so scary. And as I was reading through this talk over the last week, I just kept thinking, we are not guaranteed anything. We're not guaranteed another second. We're not guaranteed another day. And it just made me meditate on that thought even more. Who am I living for? Because if I'm living for the comforts of this world, they'll be gone tomorrow. But if I'm living for the security that comes with God and the dreams that He has built for me, that's never ending. And so I love this song. And I just pray that today that we'll be willing to abandon the comforts of the shore for the life and the dreams that God has planned for us.